Our story starts with Tetsuhiro Morinaga, a young man with a noble heart and infinite patience. Lost in his thoughts, he walks towards the laboratory where he works. It's a place full of problems and formulas that are never fully explained, where he spends his days with the man who has occupied his mind for 5 long years, Souichi Tatsumi, his senpai. Morinaga can't help but feel trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, as he is deeply in love with him. Although senpai has a tiny red flag, which is that he's an egocentric, homophobic, angry, and proud person that leads him to reject everything that doesn't fit into his world. For Morinaga, these flaws are just a small obstacle, a tiny shadow compared to the brilliance of what he truly feels. Imagine 5 years in love with senpai. He's worse than my neighbor's child, poor guy. Even so, he remains steadfast, dreaming that one day Souichi will look at him the same way. So that same day, our dear red flag senpai, who all flustered enters the laboratory where Morinaga is. By the way, they both work there because they're involved in something at the university related to the laboratory, and they never mention what it is. Morinaga, who is reviewing some things, looks up and observes him in silently. Suddenly, Souichi drops a piece of news that, in the United States of America, where his beloved younger brother was living, whom he always mentions with an affection, their same-sex marriage has just been legalized, meaning that rainbows can get married. But Donald Trump believes only 2 gender. Anyway, Morinaga listens everything, and although he tries to remain neutral, but feel his heart skip a beat. But before he can respond, Souichi, with a mixture of brusqueness and disdain that characterizes him, punch him as to erase any trace of that conversation. At night, Morinaga goes out for drinks with a friend, a colleague who knows his romantic troubles well. While they were talking, Morinaga reveals that senpai has a younger brother who had been living in Japan with them. Recently, he moved to the United States after being hired by a company along with his partner. And yes, his partner is a man. Because you know that what's important is love, homosexual love. Morinaga says that because of this, the hatred of homosexuals by senpai intensified even more. Seeing him so melancholic about Souichi, his friend decided to cheer him up with a gift, a special bottle of wine. "This one has a secret ingredient," he said with a chuckle. "It makes people affectionate." Morinaga laughed, thinking it was a joke. On his way home, Morinaga tries to throw it in the trash, but feels curious about it since Hiroto said it was so good, so reluctantly takes it home and hides it in his cupboard. That same night, Souichi calls his brother. While the alcohol was still buzzing in his head, he tells him, "Don't get too excited about the news that rainbows can now get married." But to his surprise, his younger brother wasn't even aware of the newly passed law, so he asked his partner about the news. On the other side of the line, Souichi heard all his brother and his partner conversation and how excitedly making plans, talking about a possible wedding in the future. Because what's important things is here, is love, homosexual love. The next day, Souichi runs around yelling that he's going to go to America and get a green card so he can become the governor of California to re-ban gay marriage. Morinaga convinces him to calm down and invite him to drinks with him instead, so he goes to Morinaga's apartment to drown his sorrows. They talked about everything and nothing, and when they ran out of alcohol, Souichi, in his usual bossy tone, ordered Morinaga to go to the store for bring more stock. Alone in the apartment, Souichi began to feel restless, and his mind wandered to a memory he always tried to bury. That time when Morinaga had confessed his feelings to him in a sweet, tender way in the grass. Years ago, on a summer afternoon, that moment had left him trembling with rage and confusion. But now, for some reason, he couldn't get it out of his head, so he decided to ignore it, as always, and continued looking around like a rat in Morinaga until he finds the hidden drug-filled bottle that Morinaga's friend had given him. When Morinaga returns, he found Souichi drinking the bottle, which was already half empty. Souichi grumbled, "What is this? It tastes weird." But he didn't stop drinking it. Morinaga, nervous, tried to take the bottle away, remembering his friend's joke about the secret ingredient. But Souichi resisted. After that, they goes to sleep. Well, as the night progressed, the atmosphere changed. Souichi wakes up at night to find himself aroused and unable to move his body properly. He tries to sneak off to relieve himself. You know what I mean? But due to the effects of the drug, His weakened body trips and wakes up Morinaga. Morinaga sees that Souichi is aroused, wondering if the wine had really affected him or if it was just his imagination. But suddenly, Souichi stood up, trembling slightly, and approached him. His eyes, normally cold, had a strange gleam. Moringa felt the air stop. Was this real, or just a dream fueled by 5 years of longing? Thinking that Souichi would never return his feelings, so Morinaga selfishly takes advantage of the situation. Despite Souichi's weak refusals, telling him to stop, but he continues anyway. I feel bad for him. Well, that night they make love, homosexual love, with dubious consent. The next morning, Morinaga woke up still processing what had happened. He fantasizes a peaceful sunrise, where his senpai looked at him with a gentle smile and said a good morning that would melt years of distance between them. But reality hit like a bucket of cold water. As soon as Souichi opened his eyes, his expression changed, the strange gleam from the night before transforming into an incomprehensible fury. Without a word, he grabbed the empty wine bottle that was still on the table and threw it at Morinaga with all his might. Morinaga barely managed to dodge it, feeling the glass shatter against the wall. "Ask what the hell did you do last night?" Souichi roared, trembling with rage. Morinaga, still stunned, tried to explain, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he blurted out what he had been holding back for years. "I've always been clear with you. You know how I feel, and yet you act like you don't care, as if you don't care anymore." That same day in the apartment, Souichi looked at him with contempt, his fists clenched. "I trusted you to take care of me," he spat, rubbing the previous night in his face, and how the wine and the closeness had led them to a place where he wasn't ready to go. Without giving him time to respond, he pushed him towards the door and yelled at him to leave, that he never wanted to see him again. So, we can't expect much from a Japanese yaoi written in 2004. If you want to cancel this anime, go on Twitter, #MorinagaRedFlag. Calm down. This anime also supports a very healthy message of love. Moringa, heartbroken, tried to protest, but Souichi's gaze was an impenetrable wall. "You mean nothing to me," he declared before slamming the door shut. What Souichi doesn't say, and perhaps doesn't even understand himself, is that a part of him feels guilty for letting his guard down, for letting Morinaga get so close. Hours later, Morinaga returns to apartment, recalling every moment that led him to this point. Years ago, when he fell in love with Souichi in college, he decided to call Souichi, hoping to mend things. When Souichi answers, Moringa blurts out, "I never meant to hurt you. Everything I did was because of how I feel about you, and even if you don't care, I'm sorry." On the other end of the line, he hears silence, but Souichi's response is, "Don't call me anymore." He hangs up, exhausted from fighting a love that seems impossible and unrequited, so he decides to go somewhere else without telling anyone, not even his holy club friends. Days later at the university, Souichi notices Moringa's absence in the lab. At first, he doesn't think much of it, but as the hours pass, something begins to trouble him. As his classmates and friends begin to ask Souichi if he knows where Morinaga has gone, Souichi is shocked, having thought that Morinaga had simply been avoiding him. After not being able to contact Morinaga, Souichi begins to grow extremely worried and anxious that Morinaga may have been hurt himself, getting his family contact info, searching for him, and going to his apartment that same afternoon. He knocks on the door, but there's no answer. Instead, there's a silent emptiness, as if his presence had been erased. For the first time, Souichi feels a void he can't explain, so he decides not to give up. He starts going by the apartment every day, checking every corner of his routine, the lab, the university hallways, looking for any sign of him. But Morinaga doesn't appear, and with each passing day, Souichi sinks deeper into a consuming stress and a sadness he doesn't understand. What is that feeling? How desperately he wants Morinaga to come back home, saying the loss he feels is the worst one he has ever felt. Weeks later, Souichi walks towards Moringa's apartment again, almost out of habit. However, this time, the light is on, his breath catches, his heart leaps. When he enters, he finds Morinaga packing a suitcase, saying, "I'm leaving," with a broken voice. "I need to put an end to this. Forget about it once and for all. I only came to pick up my things." Souichi, who had spent weeks imagining this moment without knowing it, feels something break inside him. "I waited for you," he confesses, his voice trembling as tears begin to well up. "All these days I've been coming here, checking the lab, I was asking about you. I was so worried I couldn't sleep. Morinaga looks at him, surprised, caught between pain and hope. I'm sorry, he murmurs, dropping the suitcase and saying he didn't want this to happen. That same night in the apartment, the two remain silent, confronting what they had never said aloud. Souichi, for the first time, doesn't run away. Morinaga, with her heart in her hands, decides to stay since there are no promises or grand gestures, only a silent understanding between them, a small step towards something they can never quite name. Because in the end, despite everything, what binds them together is what Morinaga always knew from the start. Love, complicated, painful, imperfect love, is what truly matters. And with that, this great work comes to an end. Well, so if you liked it, remember to subscribe and leave me a like. And if you've made it this far, comment the word rainbow, because not many people do. And, well, without further ado, I'll say goodbye as always.